Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Dante just checking in really quick here with the video for you all. I've been noticing just uh, having some questions and some wonderings in regards to the election coming up and the differing perspectives that people have during this political climate. And I just wanted to give some advice and some pointers for people to think about. Take it or leave it. It's up to you. But definitely, this is from a balanced, holistic perspective. How do you maintain and keep your friendships? And I'm specifically thinking about, Facebook friends and maybe just close acquaintances and family members. This election is more than a little bit different. There's a lot of contentious perspectives, none of which I'm going to get into the scope of this video because there's no point. But I do want to talk about some ways or some things to think about as it relates to our friendships and acquaintances and family members. The biggest aspect to think about if you really truly want to retain your friends is thinking through and thinking about how does someone develop a political perspective that's obviously different than your own, and really taking time to go through that. Now, I will preface this video by saying that if there are people on your timeline or your people that you're acquainted with that their perspectives that were drawn out due to this election and due to their alignment to a certain political perspective that violates your human existence and human rights, and you feel it's no longer beneficial or productive to engage in dialogue with them on a continual basis going forward, I would say to you, then that's up to you if you choose to stay with that person or not. It's up to you, right? Um, you don't have to have be friends with everybody, and um, friendships adapt over time, and you'll find that some are good and worth retaining, and some are not. So again, you have to think about that as you're going forward, especially even during and after this election that's happening. But one of the things to think about from a psychological perspective is how does one adapt and create their own, let's say, contextual beliefs about a value or perspective that is utilized in a political climate. And really, I mean, a lot of it has to do with you or that person valuing or getting a gain from a political perspective, right? Unfortunately, how the general political arena deals a lot with taking away a perspective or taking away a benefit and giving it to another group, or another group not viewing the other perspective as necessary or needed. And it's a lot of this back and forth jostling and tackling for that, right? And so it's important to think about, like, why is it this person has this perspective? Why is my perspective different than this perspective? Is there things that I believe about my perspective that might actually go against this person's lived experience, right? Again, part of the issue that we find ourselves in the political climate, again, I'm not going to get into specifics of topics and subjects because it's worthless to do that at this point. But the point I do want to make note of is that people vote for themselves. They don't vote for other people. Again, people vote for themselves. They don't vote for other people. People vote for things that will benefit their ideology of how they view the world and walk through the world, right? There is not a general mutual respect for differing perspectives and opinions at this point in time. There's not. And that's a lot of the problems. Secondly, it's an all or none type of idea when it comes to political thought processes. It's either you agree with all of it or you don't agree with any of it. So we are in this extremes of I believe this and only this. I'm on team A and you're on team B. Therefore, if you don't believe everything on team A or team B, you're in this island by yourself. And so this extreme polarization that's taken place says that everything's all or nothing. But as you know, as critical thinkers that you are, most things are on a spectrum, right? Most things are on a spectrum. It depends. And what's happened is we've been forced to align ourselves strictly with perspectives that we might not necessarily fully agree with. And a way to keep our friendships truly, and our acquaintances and our family members truly, is to say, I am not them, so I can't tell them how to live. I need to learn their perspective. If there is something that is hurting their feelings, I got to think about that. Really, I do have to think. I have to think about that strategically. I have to think about what's hurting their feelings and why don't I understand that, and being okay with exploring that. If you're friends with someone, truly friends with someone, and they tell you that something is hurting their feelings, and you do not care about that, I question whether or not that you're a good friend or not, right? And you should too. If someone's telling you something like that is hurting my feelings because this particular aspect directly affects me. And if there's no dialogue to understand literally how a decision is impacting their lives, then again, it leads to the question of why are we friends then if you can't even hear my perspective? If you can't even hear my pain, why are we friends then? And that's where we find ourselves in, folks, is that people are losing the sense of sympathy and empathy to hear other people's stories. They are, and we all are, if we're not careful, getting engulfed in this all or none type of thinking and rhetoric, which is very dangerous. Dialogue is what must come, because what I see, on my timeline and just people I talk to, it's like people are almost saying sometimes the same exact thing, but they're flipping it a different way. They say, "Well, I'm on team A and you're on team B." Well, it's like you're actually saying the same thing, but it's how you get there and the categorization of it. The problem is we've categorized ourselves, right? We've placed ourselves in this aspect of psychology called tribal psychology that really gives a good understanding of what we're seeing today in this climate that we're in. And it's important not to get sucked up in that. Really, if you don't agree with your friend, it's better to have a literal inquiry, not questioning, but inquiry as to tell me more about why that is. And hopefully you learn from that and you're okay with that. But again, that's a part of how do you retain friendships in general. If you are friends with someone and you can't actually hear and listen and value what they're saying, are you really a good friend? Really? Was your friendship anything to begin with? Or was it something that it morphed over time? Are we too rigid in our thought processes to even hear someone's pain or hear someone's perspective that's different than our own? Again, politics in the United States at this current state of time is all about I believe this and I have to believe everything of it or nothing at all. And we don't have to be subject to that. Two things can be true at the same time. We don't have to be subject to that. Nor do we have to then become uncivilized in our dialogue with one another. Truly, I've seen some of the most archaic conversations, unfortunately, on Facebook or just in general, conversations that we have or text messages. I have seen some of the most archaic discussions because at the end of the day, it says you are you and I am me. I don't experience what you experience, and I will maybe at some point talk about the psychological underpinnings of like race relations and stuff like that at some point in time, maybe in the future if necessary. But really, I mean, if you are not someone, you cannot tell them that what they're experiencing is not happening. That's nonsense. So, and that also causes more frustration and anger and outrage. So, if you want to mitigate that, if you want to be a productive part of the citizens in the United States and moving our country to a place of reconciliation with each other, it starts with us in the micro sense. Then it goes to the macro sense. So, my biggest tip to anybody that's wanting to retain their friendships and wanting to retain their family members and interactions is that just know what you experience is your own experience. It cannot account for everyone else. And secondly, get to understand someone's perspective. Don't question it, understand it. It's a difference. Because questioning, I could question someone all day long, but I don't necessarily understand it. Take time to understand it. Hear their story as truth and integrate that truth into your lived experience as you understand the world. And my friends, I think that with that type of uh, fidelity and that type of carefulness and mindfulness, we'll be able to retain and keep our friendships and hopefully restore them. Because from my observation of what I'm noticing, what I'm seeing, it's quite difficult to restore our friendships. In fact, most just end. Everyone posts things online that says, if you believe this, then delete me. If you believe that, then delete me. And what ends up happening is all the information that you're getting is being crystallized into one perspective exclusively. Then you become more and more rigid in that process. And then I won't even delve down the road of algorithms and how algorithms work and how those algorithms continue just to feed you the exclusive perspective that you have. So again, take those two things into consideration, really think about it, and also ask yourself this question: is this perspective worth losing lifelong friends? So, thanks, friends. I appreciate your time, and I hope you all have a safe and great week. Thanks.